morning, Facebook, YouTube, the world, whoever's looking at this, probably my mom. It's 2017. Welcome. That means if you're here, you made it. That means however difficult 2016 was, you're still here to talk about it. Put that in perspective. There's lots of people that didn't make it. And so I want to talk about that today and talk about resolutions and what that means, and ultimately how to make behavior change in one's life, given the fact that many people feel that the beginning of the new year is the time to do that. If you've never seen a video before, my name's Kevin Ashworth. This is Fighting Fear with Kevin Ashworth. I'm a co-director of Northwest Anxiety Institute in Portland, Oregon, where we treat anxiety disorders using ERP, exposure response prevention. But we do more than that as well. We work a lot with parents. We talk about anxiety, we talk about therapy, we talk about psychotherapy, and how to make improvements in your life. So first and foremost, we're cognitive behavioral therapists. Back to the topic. Here we are, 2017. A lot of people want to make those New Year's resolutions about making changes. And that's great. Change is important. Change matters, and change is how we move forward. But first, I want to talk briefly about your opinion of 2016. There's a cognitive distortion that we help people understand called discounting the positive. Usually, in therapy, when we see people weekly, we're focused on the things that have happened within the last week, or I should say the client is typically focused on those things. It's very easy to forget the things that have gone well. Most of us don't notice a nice meal, or a lovely breakfast, or a nice walk, or a nice day at work. What we remember very distortedly is the shite that happened that week. That Tuesday night, if you had a fight with your spouse, or Wednesday your boss was rude, or you missed the bus, those seem to stand out for us. And then at the end of the week, when people ask how we were, how our week was, our memory says, wasn't a great week. Because of course the things that usually aren't great stand out to us because they're usually not consistent. The consistency of 2016, I would ask yourself, is I was generally pretty healthy. My relationships were generally pretty good. And of course, even though there was bad news or terrible things happening to you personally, or emotionally, or whatever it was, it's helpful to think about the things that were good, only to put it in perspective. So, we say depression lives in the past, the shoulda, coulda, woulda. We also know very objectively we can't do anything about 2016. It's gone. And so we got to give up the hope of a better past, and we can learn from the things that we didn't like, or we can create boundaries for relationships that weren't successful, or have more confidence in your emotional ability to get your needs met in 2017. But that takes practice and time, and that means it takes a plan. Of course, I'm biased, but I think therapy helps. I think having somebody in therapy to help you work through those things is as effective of having a personal trainer to meet some of your physical goals in the gym. Even though sometimes it's not rocket science by any means, it's about the accountability of the relationship and really having somebody that knows how to create change and has some expertise on that. So consider it if you want to make some changes. Comparison is the thief of all happiness. I love this quote. I can't remember who quoted it initially. I stole it from Brene Brown, and she quotes it properly in her book, I think Daring Greatly. But comparison is the thief of happiness. When we compare ourselves to other people, we often feel worse off. We typically don't compare ourselves to people that aren't doing as well as we are. So there's always someone that's got more than us, and it's easy to compare that. We're not where we want to be, our body doesn't look where we want it to look, our house isn't as big as our neighbors, I don't have as much money, I don't drive a car, someone's smarter than me. The list goes on and on. So I work with people to try and minimize the amount that they're comparing themselves to another person. For New Year's resolution, however, I think you can compare yourself to someone, and that should be you. How do you want to make change? I think the first step to making change is understanding why. What is your intention in making that change? Do you hope to manage psychological distress by losing weight? Maybe that is not the best way to do that. Do you hope to improve self-esteem by dating? Maybe that's not the best way to do that. Of course, these things are great. Losing weight's great. Dating is awesome if it's for the right reason. Many times we're derailed in our goals because the motivation lacks so much because the intention behind the goal is really not what we want. Most people can accept that they just want to feel good about themselves. They believe an avenue to do that is to lose weight or have a better looking body. But ultimately, those people might continue to seek out the psychological reassurance because they don't feel very good about themselves. So that's hard when you work out and you lose a lot of weight and you still don't feel good about yourself. Really, the source of that then you need to work on personally and emotionally. So first figure that out, but then you have to set reasonable goals. People make their goals way too big, and it's great to shoot for the sky, and it's lovely, and it's important to have some long-term goals and where you want to get at. But most of us don't want to work hard to get there, or it's just too, we want to, but it's too overwhelming. So be very realistic about what you want to change this year. If you want to have a cleaner house, and you have these visions from Pinterest of spending 6 hours a day cleaning, but you haven't cleaned 6 hours in a month for the last 5 years, then you have to have more reasonable goals. If you want to work out, it has to be reasonable. Can you do more today than you did yesterday? If you want to improve your relationships, how do you know how to set those emotional boundaries with people? If you want to save money, how are you actually going to go and do that? So these things to me don't have anything to do with money or relationships or the gym. It has to do with behavior change. It has to do with implementing habits, rewarding yourself, and really taking one step in front of the other and moving forward. This stuff is different for a reason. It creates anxiety, it creates stress because it's unfamiliar and we don't know how it's going to be. Taking a risk is difficult, but the reward can be big. And if there's not a reward after taking the risk, there's usually lessons there. So think about how you're thinking about things. We call that metacognition, thinking about thinking. But really consider this for your New Year's resolution, is that I'm going to first start in understanding what I want to change and why. Why do I want to do that differently? Do I want to save up this whole year because it just feels nice to try and drive the same car that my coworker does? When you find that that's really difficult to save your money, I think the reason is because underneath that, that's not really what you want. What you're saying is I want to feel better about myself, and I think by driving that car, I will. And you probably will for about 10 minutes after you buy it, and maybe every Saturday when you wash it. Other than that, though, if you've been missing that, it's going to be there. So, Happy New Year. I'm all about positivity. I just want to be real about how people make change. Writing some goals down is really the first step, but that's not where it ends, and that certainly won't get you where you want to go. So think of breaking any goal you have into a million steps and trying to do one at a time, and that's the best way to start. Also, reward yourself for the steps that you make. We have to have some system of reward in order for these things to turn into a habit. And that reward can be anything that you create. Just got to feel good. So, Happy New Year. Follow us on Facebook, Northwest Anxiety Institute. Send me an email, kevin@nwanxiety.com. Check us out. Take care. Bye-bye.